Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So I am back. School is for fools. 10 reasons the education system is a failure. And this was something I was thinking about before I began this article. So this article talks about this thing called education and schooling. I just wanted to pose a couple of questions, or a few. When did the school system begin? And who is it intended for to succeed in the school system? The school system is a westernized tool of education for people, young people, to become productive citizens in society. If you read about the history of the U.S. and you include the tragedies that have happened in the U.S. surrounding politics, surrounding race, surrounding some of the issues that we're dealing with even up to now, you would have to ask yourself these questions. Who was the school system intended for to succeed in society, to become productive citizens? And when did it all start? And if you look farther back, you will see that there were a lot of efforts made to keep people of color, people who are black, out of school and uneducated, or in jobs that are subservient or of servitude. And anyone that falls in that marginalized area, if you're not white, you weren't looked at as being able to achieve a certain level of education, to achieve higher learning. If you look and examine at the school systems and the schools and the places that are out there that are available, like universities, what types of jobs or careers do they specialize in, and who usually succeeds? Okay, with that being said, school is for fools. 10 reasons the school and the education system is a failure. The education system is in shambles, and it has been for quite some time now. This is not weird. Old things break or go obsolete all the time. Why should this be any different? What's weird is that people still have an unshakable faith in the system. The education is important, but schooling is not. Education is important and will only be more important and become more important. Schooling, public education, and indoctrination is just bad. It's the remnant of a system made obsolete decades ago. Schooling used to serve a purpose, like the appendix inside a human body, but now it's just bad for most of us. Many aspects of the public education are problematic. For example, the usefulness of the grading system is debatable. It is disincentives creative and lopsided performance, which are the hallmark of success in the real world. And many times the grading system is just plain wrong. Like when George Orwell's writing didn't qualify for the higher standards of academia. You know, Michael Crichton, in which he's the guy who wrote Jurassic Park. He was damn smart. Unfortunately, he's dead now. Christian started writing early in life. He showed talent from the get-go and was able to support himself through med school by writing short stories under pen names. But before that, when he was 18 years old, he took an English writing class at Harvard, where he was given a C- on a paper. This confused him because he felt this paper was one of the best he had ever written. Not only did he receive or did the C- anger him, Christian, but he really seriously believed that his teacher was incompetent and unable to think for himself outside of the grading criteria. To test if this hypothesis was correct, Christian decided to do something risky. He submitted a well-known essay written by George Orwell under his own name. This was 100% plagiarism, but Christian copied the essay word for word, and if he was found out, he would be expelled from Harvard. But when the time came for the grading of his new essay, he was given a B-. George Orwell's writing wasn't good enough to make the cut. That makes you wonder, what does cut it mean? What does cut it mean? What the hell are you supposed to do to get an A? Christian was really confused now. I can relate. I can relate to that because I too felt confused many times during my school years, starting with when I was a kid, 8 years old. Ludwig gets put in his place. When I was in a second grade, I had a friendly competition with classmates, and we competed over who could solve the most math problems each week. Our class had about 60 kids in it, age 3 cohorts, age 7 and 9. And for some reason, me and my friend were the only ones good at math. So our first year, age 7 and 9, we progressed to doing math books for kids who were 10 years old. One day I teased my friend for being slow because I was 10 pages ahead of him. And my friend said that he didn't care because he was still years before everyone else. Our math teacher happened to be nearby when he said this, and she went fucking crazy. I don't know why no one else cared. She made a huge scene and embarrassed us in front of the whole class. So you think you're smart just because you're doing math of people older than you in your cohort, huh? So how would you like it if I took your books, huh? You wouldn't like that very much, would you? So we got really scared and pleaded, no, please don't take our books away. So yeah, that's what I thought. I really should take away your books, and that serves braggarts such as yourself right, puts you in your place. Okay? So, but I will let you keep them if you apologize to everyone in this class for bragging and hurting your feelings. So we probably apologized for the whole class and to the whole class, and they probably didn't know what was going on, but my interest in math almost died there. So we got a teacher pretty much not really giving or paying respects to the fact that these two young people were pretty good at math and well equipped and adjusted. Now, haven't we learned that everybody has different learning skills, different ways they learn, and at different ages, different speeds? Yes, we have. So a passive-aggressive thesis advisor tries to stop 22-year-old Ludwig from getting an auspicious start to his career. So when I did my thesis project, I had to battle with a semi-hostile academic overseer. We had conflicting incentives. So I wanted to learn useful stuff, acquire valuable business contacts, and get the best entry-level marketing job possible. My handler wanted these theses to conform to the academic standards and to be written in a quasi-intellectual style full of citations of people whose work I haven't read or don't agree with. And of course, to be an easy to grade as possible, easy to grade for them. So this made me angry because I had to put a shitload of effort into getting tailor-made thesis project from one of the world's top brands. IKEA read how I did it here. So I took more initiative, and all of my class combined cold called a ton of people and felt that I should be rewarded for it. So the least that the university could do was to stand out of my way. I got it on my own and let me do it on my own. Instead, they put up obstacles. I guess they don't want students to get jobs. My handler wasn't supportive at all. And if anything, she was trying to sabotage the start of my career. And looking back on it now, I don't care at all. But as I reflect on the situation, it really highlights one of the big underlying problems with universities. So these are different people with different situations that they have been involved in that has held them back. And mind you that some of these people are not black people. So we haven't even talked about that. These are people that supposedly are white. They have complained about the school system. So if the school system is hard in and of itself for them, how do you think it is for a person of color that wasn't even at one time allowed to be in the same classroom with people who are white? So the institutionalization of knowledge and its problems. University is supposed to be a final checkpoint towards the work life. It's meant to train and empower young people into getting jobs that they want, not to recruit them into the ranks of academia like a cult. Unfortunately, this is what has happened. Like big government, the interest of university is no longer primarily in serving the people, which is why it is created, but in serving itself and making sure that the machine stays alive with its cogs turning. So one of the main ways universities do this by forcing students to waste their time writing these theses that no one reads or cares about. So this is really a shitty final rite of passage before entering the work life. So I force boring and non-value adding activities on those who don't want to join the institution of knowledge. Give them practical assignments instead. University is now strongly mismatched to demands of the job market. So college and uni or university is short for uni, might be a good place for finding yourself and partying a lot. See, now this is coming from people who have gone to college. And I have seen this when I've been around the USC campus, which I've lived very close, not very far out of range. But it's not a good place to find a job you'll love or excel in. Like my friend Kyle Ashton wrote a few years ago, you go to college to figure out what you want to do and what you like. Going into college I was mainly interested in three things: libertarian ideas, trading, and making movies. And graduating, those are still the most interesting things to me, and none have been enhanced by my college career. In fact, I am an economics major, and my ability to grasp what's happening in the world is almost totally thanks to the internet and willingness to read, not their bullshit textbooks. And so this is coming from somebody who's been to college, says that the internet has exposed them to more knowledge than the universities. My economics degree is like a SAT score. People can look at it and say, well, he jumped through those hoops well. And that's basically what it is. More and more companies, especially the ones worth working for, are looking at what you can do and what you've actually created. I graduated with a master's degree in business, and guess what? I'll never have any use for it. Why? Because initiative beats jumping through hoops every day of the week. Okay? Now, let me tell you why I think that the school system's a failure. The school system was created for the 18th century. School teaches you to fit in to an obsolete economy. School turns you into a sissy conformist. School breaks down most people's will to learn, and school doesn't cultivate self-knowledge. School turns independent people into codependent peons. School is full of propaganda. School doesn't teach you how to think and develop your own style. School gives you a false certainty about things you can't know. And school indoctrinates false rules that handicap you for the real world. So starting with the reason one, school system was created for the 18th century, it's hard to pin down when and where public education started, but for the first time, public education was cohesively organized to fit the needs of an entire country in a successful way, was in Prussia under Frederick the Great, 1750. To entrust government with the power of determining education which our children shall receive is entrusting our servants with the power of the master. Frederick the Great. Frederick's education system in Prussia. Frederick turned Prussia into a socialist state with planned economy. Okay, so the country was so bureaucratic that women had to register the exact date of each month's period to the state. Okay. The purpose of Prussia public education was to train citizens into the jobs of the government they decided was important for the future of the country. Remember, this was a planned economy, not a free market. And the economy at that time was simple enough plus. Paris's population was small enough for a bunch of highly intelligent people to plan ahead. Frederick and his administrators could make reasonably accurate projections and decide that we need so and so many workers for this and that role. So Frederick's stroke of genius made Prussia into a powerhouse of Europe. Napoleon's education system in France. See, now each country, each state has specific things that they feel that people should be engaged in terms of work environment and career-wise and being career-minded, who should be in control, who should be managers, supervisors, and on up and down the list, and who fits those roles, and how far you can go, and how much money you can achieve, and whoever is in the positions of leadership at these places of employment is the one that calls the shots as to who moves up and who gets demoted down. So Napoleon's education system in France, the 50-something years old Napoleon noticed how successful Frederick's education system had been and decided to copy it for France with some minor adjustments. For example, Napoleon wanted the education system to train competent personnel, military leaders, scientists, and engineers for his army and administrative. Indoctrinate citizens in obedience and patriotism. And so I wanted to bring these things out so that you know specifically the reason why the school system is set up the way it is. Because some of the same ideology that is here in this article that explains or expounds on why they set up the school system is the same ideology that is set up in these westernized school systems that don't fit the needs of everybody, especially marginalized people. That's the reason why people are trying to tweak things and change things, but you can't necessarily do it because somebody that is running the whole system of the education system is the one that puts everything in motion into place. It says what goes and what doesn't go. There's a school board, and they have to vote on all of the things, from money, from the budgets, from what kind of curricula is going to happen in the schools, and what they will and will not allow, and who's going to be hired, and who's going to be demoted, who's going to be in what position, and how much money they make. So It indoctrinates citizens into obedience and patriotism, and wrests power and the Christian church to the state. Like Frederick, his system was also a massive success for those people of that time for its intended purposes. So the skill in which Napoleon's engineers built bridges, moats, and other combative structures was unparalleled at its time. And so that was what they had reared those young people to learn to become engineers and to train for those specific careers so that they could build and make these things. And other people were shut out, of course. Or you were used for your knowledge or for what you did know, for your talents, but you weren't credited to it. You were wiped out of history. It wasn't showed that certain people of color built the country. It was only showed as though only white people built the country or learned or had the top jobs or had the expertise or were given patents to different ideas, when they in fact had black people working in some of these same occupations that had no credibility to any of these ideas when it was their idea to begin with. So the Western world's education system, after noticing the obvious success of Parisia and France, much due to their education system, the rest of the Western world eventually copied their approach with minor adjustments of their own. And so this change took place during the early stages of industrialization, that period. And so the biggest difference between Parisia and France, or the French educational systems, the Western educational system, had to do with training of a population for new stuff like factory work, managerial work outside of the public administrative work, and scientific inquiry and origins of the STEM fields. So the greatest invention of the 19th century was the invention of the method of invention. Okay, Alfred Whitehead. So off the top of your head, you probably will instinctively think most about managerial work and scientific inquiry, but those areas receive maybe 10% focus each, whereas training people into factory workers received about 80% of the focus. And so they were more focused about training people as factory workers. And there is a purpose for that, because it was an industrial period. And so why? Because factory work was by far the most important thing of the economy at that time. And it does not come about naturally. So lots of public education had to do with what we now call schooling, disciplining and indoctrinating people into becoming obedient, reliable factory workers. So sitting in straight rows, raising your hand, and before you address the teacher, asking the permission to do X, Y, and Z, following the rules. So the reason too, school teaches you to fit in to an obsolete economy. So see public education for what it is: a system for training as many people as possible into professions reasonably projected into the future. So it worked pretty damn well for Frederick and the great Napoleon. It also worked for many Western countries during the industrialization period. So today it does not work well, because the world is changing very fast and rapid pace than before. The internet has taken over, AI and robotics and such things as rendering many industries obsolete. Okay? So the school system can't keep up with this. So how can you project of what jobs to train workers for one generation from now if you can't even project of what will happen in many industries 5 to 10 years from now? And so modern schools are great if you want to be a retail clerk, a cashier, truck driver, doctor, nurse, janitor, property manager, a gazillion types of office workers and administrative agents, numbers, counters, and middle managers. But I don't know about you, but I don't want one of those jobs. Reason 3, school turns you into a Sissy Conformist, so too bad nearly all the winners are contrarian in one way or another. So Sissy Conformist has to do with they're told, or they have to do what they're told, and they have to obey the leader. And so a lot of these jobs want you to be obedient and they want you to work underneath somebody. As asked for permission to go to the bathroom, they have to watch the stupid TV shows and memorize American Idol names to keep up with recent happenings of the popular culture. And it's not short of the intellectual prostitution of corrupt of Dunbar's number to fit in. In doing so, living in a collective hyperreality. Sissy conformers don't get to set the pace of trajectory for the projects that they work on. The slowest members of the group decides that, and the chain is no stronger than its weak link. And so in school, winners have to carry the losers. And so the winner, to get his superior ideas picked, he has to rely on the consensus decision of the group rather than a merit of the idea. The merit of the idea. So the real life winners are those who dare to do interesting stuff that stand out and runs contrary to the popular opinion. So I spoke to a billionaire, Martin Sandquist, asking him, what's the worst business advice that you ever got? He answered, not starting links. Okay, so no one thought it was a good idea. Professors, banks, friends, very few believed in it at the time. So this is somebody that, if you are somebody that's industrious and motivated, and somebody that is, you have your own ideas to stand out for your own self. A lot of the young people, what they're doing now, they're more internet inclined. Some of the kids come out already internet inclined, so a lot of them are trying to take tech jobs. Some of these jobs are not jobs where you're going into, necessarily doing the old school jobs where you're going into a factory and what have you. Some are factory jobs, but it's more high tech. And so they want you to have like some technical knowledge, or some already have it naturally. They're talented in it. And some of these jobs, they are jobs that you wouldn't believe. They've got a lot of jobs where you can make deliveries and make double the pay of what you make as a teacher. And we've seen that. I had an article where a teacher, he was working for 20 years in a classroom, and he was making under $50,000 a year, and he was making half that. And so now he makes that $50,000 and maybe then some. He makes more than what he made it being a lead teacher. And so teaching jobs, a lot of people know they don't make too much money, and they make just enough to survive. But there are other jobs that are out there now that, even if you weren't in the field of education, that you can make relatively good money if you just basically are persistent and you're motivated enough to do so. And all you might need is a vehicle. You can do deliveries. And so it goes on to say that if you have an idea that people don't believe in, it's probably a good idea. And so you shouldn't pay too much attention to other people's opinions, especially not our education system, which tends to be very biased. So these are people that are, and I assume what I'm reading, these are white people that maybe they are not the brightest tool in the shed, but they're not dumb in the sense where they have common sense, and they're using their common sense and their creativity and their talents to state that they have found great opportunities of employment based on just their talents and some of the things that they have created with their own awareness, to know that you don't need all these books and you don't need all these high school tuition loans and stuff like that to become educated to get a job to survive in the world. But school system has kind of set up a system where it is old school and it's becoming obsolete to this generation, and it can't keep up with the new times and the new technologies that are coming out. And so it says, especially not our education system, which tends to be very biased. And so I believe you need to try to think for yourself as much as possible and engage in self-studies, self-taught, self-learn things that you know commonly that people would, they're like, why would I do that? I'm going to go to school for like 40 years, and if you get out, you have this school debt, loan debt, and you don't get the job that you went to school for 40 years. That's just an exaggeration, 40 years. Of course, some of us feels like we've been in school for 40 years, but you don't get paid what you're worth or what you would think you would be worth with all the education that you've acquired in these school systems. So is it set up for certain people to achieve and others not? Those are the questions proposed. I don't think I've ever learned or I've learned anything useful in school. Everything of value I've learned by being passionate about some subjects and studying it for myself and reading and watching YouTube. Can you believe that? Stuff that people take for granted. Like, oh, you can't get it. That's crazy stuff. Gossip on YouTube. But if you really start doing some searching and researching, which you don't have to do very much of, on YouTube, on the internet, you can find more educational tools than in the schools. Isn't that crazy? And some of the schools will use the internet so that they can help guide them in their curricula. So if you want to do something in a unique way, it's important for you to try to do yourself. Otherwise, it's probably the same as everyone else. Reason 4, school breaks down most people's will to learn. So school is jail for some children. Okay, so Haley. Okay, so this name is really rather long and wrote it in a book. Flow that. Sissy Conformity. Yeah. Okay, so I may not have said that last name correctly, but many people give up on learning after they have leave school because 13, 20 years of intrinsically motivated education is still a source of unpleasant memories. This almost happened to me. I thought I didn't like learning until I was 20. So then I realized being a student in the school has little to do with enjoying the learning process of achieving real world success. So the trick to create a framework of learning and gaining knowledge in your own terms. It will take a while, but you'll love it once you learn it. So reason 5, school doesn't cultivate self-knowledge. So education is either for domestication or for freedom. And this is by Ono Coutinho. Okay. Okay, so metacognition is the most common trait among successful people. This has been agreed upon by wise men for the millennia, dating back to the ancient Greece, in which the purpose of education is to bring about self-knowledge. So school does nothing to teach or incentivize metacognition or self-knowledge. And why should it? That's not what it was made for. Never was. So the closest you get to assignments having to do with analysis and critical appraisal of some subject, but at least in my experience, that's just for show. Whenever I seriously scrutinize anything, I always got lower grades, like Christian. Okay, so the only exception to this is that I can think of was my Swedish and English teacher during high school. He was the sort of natural teacher who could make his students interested in anything and genuinely encourage his students to be open-minded and reflective. He was great. In any way, it makes sense that things are this way. The industrialists of the 19th century didn't want independent-minded thinkers, see? So what is this generation built around? And some people have kind of touted that we're independent thinkers. We don't do what we used to do back in the days. We don't follow what everybody else believes. And so this is not the school system, however. They wanted reliable managers and precise workers. You either are a manager or supervisor or you're the worker. And you have to listen to the person that's over you. And the school system is still built on to churn out people and people who know how to compute, but not how to think. So people with high metacognition, the sort of who over time develop a strong self-knowledge, tend to succeed in spite of their schooling, not because of it. So reason 6, school turns independent people into codependent peons, like the bed of the procrustes. You're forced to it to fit in whether you want to or not. But a better question is do you even want to fit in with those people? So only losers, weaklings have to fit in. Okay. So if you want to kind of blend in or fit in with what everybody else is doing, instead of be yourself and be unique and be talented and bring about your own cultivation of your own skill set. So the strong make their own way of life in life. So you don't need to make a detailed study of the savannah to understand that you want to be an apex predator. So humans are animals too. So we just wear suits and skirts and work to work. Okay, so we walk on tubes, but some of us do. But unlike animals, we work well in different settings. Some people work 10 times more effectively alone. Do you? And some people like to work with other people. Depends. Some people will do well in different settings. It's an indicator on how you're going to do in your occupation. So I can't answer that for you, and neither can the school. So it takes self-knowledge. You have to feel yourself around the world to find out what works for you, what jobs work, what don't work, and what your interests are, what kind of learner you are. How do you catch on? Do you take direction well? Are you the leader? Are you the one that is the worker? And so that's usually how it goes in life. And it has to be that way. So school is full of propaganda. So how else will you maintain the democracy? Okay? So you cannot get through the density of the propaganda with which American people, though dreaded media, have been fueled, and the horrible public education system we have for an average person. It's just grotesque. This is Gore Vidal. So it's different for each country. In Sweden, the propaganda is based on outdated socialist ideology and sort of prompts math teachers to go into rage and threaten to take away the 8-year-olds' math books if they use it too much. Okay? And so this sort of expounds on some of the little stories that I talked about in the beginning of this article. But in the real world, it's very hard to succeed when you have this sort of mental dysfunction, but because it is at odds with reality. So another example in the U.S., where many schools are not allowed to teach about the evolution or abortion because crazy Christians prohibit it. Okay? And so some of this, even though they say they don't want to put religion in school, some of the teachings reflect on the Christian or the WASP way of life, urban way of life, in terms of not urban, but westernized way of life. Never really expounding on urban ways of life, different ethnic backgrounds and what their experiences are, unless it's something in the negative realm. So reason 8 is school doesn't teach you how to think and develop your own skills, your own style, your own talents, your own creativity. And so what is this world built on now? Your own style, your own way of thinking, your own way of developing, and your own creativity. And that's why a lot of young people will flock to some of these music artists, because that's who they are. They want to be creative. They want their own way of thinking, their own style, to be creative and to be motivated to do something that they love, not something that they are forced to do because it's just something they have to do. So in the material arts, or in the martial arts world, there's a long-standing conflict between the different styles. Which style is the best? So that's even in the martial arts world. So the same goes for the acting methods. There are now acting studios where students are taught how to act. Many practitioners, the real success under their belt, like David Mamet, believe that acting studios do more harm than they do good. Okay? So in the audience of that That show, there are hundreds of acting students and all looking at the famous guest with deep admiration, as though the person is a metaphysical guru who inhibits the secret of acting. So little do the members of the audience know that they're probably about as good as actors as the celebrities or a celebrity up on stage is, only that they lack the level of breadth of comprehensivism that the celebrity has. So the celebrity is typically knows 10 other skills than just acting, such as promotion, business, networking, and public speaking, etc. Something you have to have other skills to fall back on. So a lot of times in this, the way the world works is what do you do after, one thing is something, career or some type of dream that you outgrow or you mature to a level of now I'm older. What can I fall back on? And what are the skill sets do I have? And the way this world is, how it's ever fast-paced changing, is to have more than one skill set, more than two skill sets. So the celebrity success does not rely solely on his or her acting skills alone. Again, the same goes for the martial arts. The martial arts world we know as MMA, which is superior to any and all other martial arts, is you can call MMA a martial art. So even in the rules that have changed, some new type of MMA would still prevail. Why? Because it's not just one style, it's the practice of putting many styles together into a unique synthesis that fits the individual fighter. And that's how you become successful at anything in life, not just fighting, not just one thing. So you have to develop your own style in life by gaining experience and studying other fields than the one you're in. So you can't just rely on one thing. And that's exactly what I said prior to reading this. So that's how you become obsolete, not future proof. Okay, so you pretty much handicap yourself if you only know one thing, you only learn one thing. And isn't that what happened to a lot of people that worked in those factories, at the car factories in Detroit? They only learned one factory skill, and then when it became obsolete, and when those skills went to another country, to other people, because money and because of the budgets and because of governments and because of political issues, you only know that one skill, and so you don't have any other skill sets. So now that leaves you what? Jobless. Because now you're in a world where everything is high tech, and the skills that you know were from back in the days when you were doing hands-on, and your level of skill set is a lot different than the skill set of those of Silicon Valley. So the memorization of facts probably makes up about 80% of the school education, public education. So the aspect of public education does more harm than good, because it can lead to three common types of cognitive handicaps: box thinking, outdated beliefs, and domain specificity. So the mistaken notion that you can fit reality into neat boxes pertaining to specific academic disciplines, that's box thinking. And outdated beliefs, deeply rooted confirmation bias regarding facts and certitudes of the life of business that may never be uprooted. Domain specificity, conditioning of mental practices convenient in the classroom but typically useless or forgotten in life because the environment is different now. And so all the three of the above cognitive handicap breeds a sense of false certainty, where you feel more confident in your abilities and understanding of the world than you deserve to. So often you see it in the university graduates who feel entitled to such and such a salary for having, as Kyle eloquently put it, jump through the hoops. But they want to be paid for their grades, not for the results that they produce. So this false certainty is especially rampant among students of the macroeconomics, liberal arts, political science, and similar areas where there are few, if any, real-world litmus tests to test performance against. This might explain why these people are causing the most ruckus in social debates without a track record to back up their claims. So one of the worst examples is gender specialists. So reasons school conditioned you into having, that's number 9. Reasons number 9 is the school conditions to having you an unhealthy and irrational fear of the unknown, which student wants to be caught by the teacher not knowing the answer to the question. So no one dares to say, I don't know, but if you give me a day, I will have the answer by tomorrow. Public education tricks you into false certainty from thinking that everyone is knowledgeable and quantifiable. So worse still, that is actually worth investigating the time to know or quantify everything before being able to make decisions. So if it was not the most important resource. So the real world, it's more important to take action and to get moving than it is to be 100% certain. Momentum and psychology matter more. Reason 10, conclusively, school indoctrinates false rules that handicap you for the real world. So in school, you're not allowed to work the way you want. So you have to sit at your desk, be quiet, and then you have to do it like the textbooks say do it. So in school, you can't think and say what you want. You might hurt the feelings of the dullards or the immigrants or insert other group of currently downtrodden people. So you know what they call taking initiative and being creative in school? Cheating. Okay, so in the real world, you can cheat as much as you want, but you just do what you want, learn what you want, and rely on your judgment and make decisions under uncertainty and take responsibility for your actions thereafter. So the rules are that there are no rules. Aristotle, Onassis. So what could be simpler? The end. Okay, and so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And I know some people thought this was way over my head than need be. But you have a group of people that come from different backgrounds. Of course, they mentioned France. They mentioned some of these people that were supposed to be scholars and what have you. But you have some people that are just regular average Joes or people, and some who might be famous, like they said, one who wrote the script to Jurassic Park. They weren't looked at as being highest standard in academia, that they were not acceptable. They weren't AA students. They weren't 4.0 material, supposedly, in the school system. So it's more like thinking outside the box. And so I know this is a long-winded thing, but I thought, think about all of this. These are people that are, what I would assume, they're not people of color necessarily, but they even have a problem with the school system. So think about people who weren't written in these ideas, who weren't included simply based on the color of their skin and what background they come from. So you see how hard it is just for regular people, supposedly, to even accept the school system how it is. And now with it changing so rapidly, it seems like now you can get a job just for delivering groceries and make more money than somebody who's been in school for 4 years with all this engineering experience. You have these jobs now that are, I would say, no-brainer jobs. In other words, doesn't mean you're a dumb person. I feel like people who are smart and very creative are some of the smartest people doing jobs that don't take a lot of, I got to figure this out, I got to figure that out. It may be some simple things that you have to know. Of course, you have to know the basics. You have to know how to read. You have to know how to count. You have to know, some simple basics. But if you can just put out and execute a particular A and B type of task, boom, you get paid. And, Uber has come out with that. Lyft has come out with that. They have other jobs where you can work at Amazon. And when you're working in there, you're working in a high-tech factory. You're not working in an old school factory, where you're doing, this old school type of work. These are things that are more hip, more in, more now, what the young people are gravitating to. Do the schools reflect this? No, not really. They're going back to the old teaching. Might be why some young people are not as attracted to it. Wondering why do we have to learn all of this? And then they leave out this part of history, but we're learning all of this, but then when we get out, we're doing a job that had nothing to do with what we went to school learning. So is this for indoctrination, socialization, propaganda, and all the things that they mentioned all above? What are your thoughts, feedback, and comment on this? This is more of a talking piece type of a thing. School, is it for fools? What is it? And now with the talks of, a lot of people going into these universities, is it really a pointless situation because it locks you into a student loan debt? And that has been talked about a lot often recently, that some people can't even buy a house because once they've got all this education, they learn that they don't qualify because they have this student loan debt. When they do get a profession, it was thought of that when you get a high paying job that you'll be able to pay your student loan debt off. But what they didn't add into the mix is that if you get married, you have children, you have a mortgage note, you have a car note, you have insurance note, you also have other, things that might come up in your life. And if you have children, you're going to have to pay for childcare, all these things. And when you get through paying for all of that, you only have a little bit of money for the student loan debt. And that's why it ends up being debt, because you can't pay it off right away. Didn't think about that. Having said that, I'm going to end this video. What do you think? Is school for fools? Especially the school system now, how it is. Is it outdated? Do they need to do more to change the school system? Something to think about. Thanks for listening.